Natural and honey processing are two methods that are less frequently used in Guatemala, but are gaining popularity in the specialty coffee sector. While in some countries, natural processing is very common, in Guatemala it is new and experimental. This method requires less water than the traditional washed method, and thus could be considered more environmentally friendly, and can be done in dry areas where washing coffee is not feasible. In this method, cherries are first submerged in water to clean off any dust or dirt, homogenize their temperature, and lower their bacterial count. The cherries are then brought directly to dry on raised beds, with their mucilage and skin still on. The beans are dried until they reach 10 to 12% moisture and resemble a small dried pod. During the drying, the cherries must be spread into thin layers and turned frequently in order to prevent mold and ensure an even drying with enough airflow. This process takes anywhere from 18 to 22 days. Another method, known as honey processing, shares some of its procedures with natural processing. Only a small number of producers in Guatemala experiment with the honey processing method. With honey processing, the cherries are depulped, meaning their skin is taken off, as is done in the washed method. The beans, with their mucilage intact, are then spread into thin layers on the raised beds and turned regularly in order to achieve even drying. Drying is a very important part of the honey processing method. It usually takes from 16 to 18 days total. Turning the beans regularly prevents mold from occurring. Guatemala has a strong potential to produce clean and sweet honey processed lots. It is important to remember that every farm has its own unique microorganisms, climate, and coffee varieties, all of which affect the end quality. Therefore, what works for one farm might not work for another. Producers need to experiment and try out different processes to see what works for their coffee in their unique location, keeping in mind the ambient humidity, temperature, and drying time. These coffees are characterized by their subtle fruity notes and sweetness.